Hi, everybody. This is Ron Kanour. Several years ago, Leela and I, as you all realize, we had to move to Hollis Springs in order to be a little closer to our children as we grew older. Shortly after we moved in, I was driving down our street, and in one of the homes in the driveway, there was a set of golf clubs. And Leela and I said to each other, wow, I can't believe there's a set of golf clubs in the driveway. Somebody's going to steal those golf clubs. Well, we came back from the store, and the golf clubs were still there. The next day, we were driving out again, and the garage door was open, and the set of golf clubs in the driveway. When we came back, the golf clubs were still in the driveway, the garage door was open, and there was someone there. And since I had an interest in starting to learn to play golf, I decided to go ahead and stop and meet this guy. His name is Howard. And so I said, hey, I see you're a golfer. I said, well, I'm trying to be one too. And he said, great. He said, it worked. He said, he put them out there as bait to find another person who enjoyed golf. Well, as I got to know Howard, I had an opportunity to share the gospel with him in various ways, numerous times, but he had absolutely no interest, but we still continued to be friends. And one day Howard called me and he said, Ron, he said, I have a friend coming down from New York, and I am trying to get some guys together to go play some golf together while he's here. And so he asked me if I would be able to join him. And so the day that he was going to do it, it worked out for me to be able to join him. And he invited another man by the name of Joe, who was a painting contractor. And this painting contractor joined me, and we were both in the same cart. And as we played golf, I think we got into like 3 or 4 holes. And Joe turned to me and he said, Ron, he said, you're older than me. He said, you have any advice for a younger guy like me? He was in his 40s. And I turned to him and I said, Joe, I said, you want the long answer or do you want the short answer? And he said, give me the short answer. So I said to him, I said, Joe, do life God's way and you will be okay. Well, when we finished the round of golf, he asked me if it would work out for us to get a cup of coffee together sometime. And we did. And I found out that Joe was a believer and that he really wanted to learn more about what it was like and what it would be like to walk with God. So Joe and I started meeting for Bible study. And one of the things I taught Joe was how to have a daily devotional time, a time alone with God. You know, God in his word in Psalm 46:10 says, be still and know that I am God. Each of us as believers need to spend a regular time alone with God in order to get to know him if we want to develop an intimate relationship with him. So I taught Joe how to have a devotional time. And then he wanted to learn more about how to share his faith. And so I mentored him in some of those areas. And then he wanted to learn some things about how to come alongside someone else and how to disciple them life on life. So we met for a number of years together. And it's really exciting when I think about Joe because Jesus, if you recall, in Matthew 28, right before he left and ascended into heaven, he said to his disciples, go make disciples. And in the Greek, it actually says, as you go, make disciples. And it's been interesting as Joe and I have developed this friendship, and as we have spent time together, Joe has learned how to make a disciple, to come alongside someone else and disciple them right where they are. You know, today we live in this culture where a lot more people aren't going to church. We don't live in the church culture anymore. And so it's important that we, as disciples of Jesus, that we learn how to share our faith and how to come alongside those who don't know Christ and who are unchurched, and help them to grow in their faith. And it's interesting that, if you read the New Testament, you cannot read the New Testament without noticing something, and that is this. It's disciples who make disciples. And one day, as you recall, Jesus was walking by the Sea of Galilee, and he saw two fishermen, and those two fishermen were Peter and his brother Andrew. And as I said, they were fishermen. So their occupation, their vocation was they were fishermen. And later on, he met some other men who were fishermen, and he also met some tax collector. He met a tax collector and later a doctor. And it's really interesting that these were people, in many ways, just like us, everyday people who Jesus taught how to advance the gospel and his kingdom right where they are. Today, in the body of Christ, today in the world in which we live, we need an army of what I would call everyday disciple makers. Disciples who have really developed a relationship with Jesus, have on their heart what's on his heart, and have been equipped to be able to come along someone else, maybe a neighbor, maybe someone in their workplace. So these everyday people, they could be landscapers, they could be computer programmers, or they could be a painting contractor, just like Joe, who learned to make disciples. So again, the giant need in the world today, and the giant need of the hour, I would say, would be an army of disciples making disciples. God's plan for growing his kingdom, and a key part of his plan for growing his kingdom, is disciples making disciples. It was just a few weeks ago, as I met with Joe, I asked him, I said, Joe, if you had $10 million and you didn't have to worry about money anymore to provide for your family or anything, I said, what would you like to do for a vocation? And his immediate answer was, I would want to make disciples. Joe, an everyday believer, became an everyday disciple maker. Today, Joe is being salt and light with those employees of his. He's shared the gospel with a number of them, and he is currently coming alongside his brother and teaching him, passing on to him what I taught him, and that is how to be an everyday disciple maker. Thanks for allowing me to share with you, and thank you for partnering with us in disciples making disciples all these years. God bless.